Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I don't know, good night, wherever you guys are. Maybe if you are not able to sleep and wake up in the middle of the night and watching our show, thank you for this. And thanks for stopping by. So, like Petra said, my name is Kiran Chikala. It's rhymes with the beer, Japanese beer, Kirin Ichiban. So that's what I refer myself to. But I'm a cloud architect here at Panzura, and I'm based in the Seattle region. So today we are going to be talking about not just ransomware, because everybody knows what ransomware is. What we are going to be talking about is, or discussing rather, is how Panzura can actually help you mitigate and protect your environment from a ransomware attack. And as Petra mentioned, there is going to be a live Q&A session in the end. So please, feel free to type in your questions. So let's go on with this. Just to go over what we'll be talking about today, a brief introduction about Panzura, who we are, and what we do. And I also want to briefly touch about ransomware. I mean, you're probably well aware of ransomware, but I want to go over the human factor and how users are the most vulnerable when it comes to a ransomware attack, right? So I just want to go over that aspect of it. And we'll also talk about, how an attack happens on an organization and what are the effects of it. And this will be a good segue for us to go into one of the examples of one of Panzura's customers when they got hit by ransomware and what happened in that scenario. We'll talk about how they recovered from such an attack and how that actually helps lead into the fact that Panzura today has end-to-end security and resilience built in to the environment, and how this actually makes Panzura ransomware proof and the intelligence behind the technology. In the end, I want to close with a new feature that will be released pretty soon. And that basically allows for Panzura to do an automatic detection of ransomware and how this could play in your environment. So what does Panzura do? And we help you store, secure, and monetize all of your unstructured data. From a storage perspective, we have Panzura Cloud File System, which is an enterprise-grade global distributed file system. And to secure this data, we manage the cloud file system with Panzura Data Services, which is our SaaS offering, making us a data management company, not a storage company, right? So there's a huge difference between the two, and you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about. Because we actually help you monetize your data, where typically 90% of the data goes unused in a lot of environments, and customers usually store all of this data, they back it up, they replicate it, but not really deriving any value from it, right? And so we can help you get all of your unstructured data to the cloud as well and make it available to advanced cloud native services as well and derive the true intelligence from your data. I mean, what's the point of storing petabytes of data if you're not able to do anything with it? It's just data, and it's not information. We want information out of it, right? So that's what Panzura helps to do. So we are a software company that offers a suite of products allowing you to better store, secure, and monetize your unstructured data. But today, we will be diving deeper into the store and secure part of Panzura. Okay, ransomware, what you know about it, right? So I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are aware of what ransomware is and the effects of ransomware on an organization can have. And I'm positive, a lot of you would actually raise your hand if I asked how many of you know someone or someone personally that works at a company or an organization that got hit by ransomware. I mean, it's not that uncommon anymore. And did you know that it actually takes on average about 21 days to recover from a ransomware attack? I mean, that's a long time to be down and to be out of business, no matter how wealthy the organization is. It's a lot of time wasted. And the unfortunate part about all of this is that majority of the organizations, if not all, I mean, deep down under, they do know that they are not 100% ransomware proof. I mean, this goes to show that you can never prove that a network is 100% secure, but you can only secure it to the best of your ability, to the best of your knowledge, and most importantly, to the best of your available resources, right? How much ever you are able to put out to it. And with ransomware attacks, it's not about when, or rather, it's not about if, rather when, you know that. And it's not about who, rather who next is going to get hit by ransomware. And that's why I'm sure you're here to learn how Panzura can actually help your environment become ransomware proof, right? So trust me, by the end of this, you will get a kick out of it. So buckle up. Okay, the human factor. So the security of anything, let it be a fortress in Game of Thrones, or let it be a company's network, it is only as strong or as secure as the weakest link within. What am I trying to say here? So let's say for a fortress, the weakest link is a soldier guarding the portcullis, right? AKA the big old iron gates at the entrance. And in the case of any organization, the weakest link is the end user, unfortunately. And as long as there are human beings who are users of technology, there will always be a gap in how secure the same technology that protects the data that we as human beings generate as social beings and rely upon literally for everything, because if this data gets stolen, it actually puts a lot of burden on us, on us as individuals and as a society. So this security gap has been penetrated, obviously, as you know, over the centuries, all the way from the Trojan horse that was said to have, been used by the Greeks to fool the soldiers who wheeled it into the city of Troy, by themselves, and to the latest ransomware attacks that trick an end user. Where to go? Sorry. That trick an end user at every 11 seconds. And while individual naivete and lack of awareness enable these ransomware attacks, the security vulnerabilities are in all sorts of organizations, from large financial firms to even school districts. And this ransomware attackers, they don't discriminate, right? So, and to top it all off, these attackers are becoming smarter by the day, right? They're using social engineering techniques to target individuals based on their social media profiles. Again, the data that we make public and put it on Facebook for them to actually see and stalk and spy on. And the worst part is, nowadays there are even some bad actors within an organization who can actually go to the dark web and hire ransomware as a service, right? And honestly, they are more likely to be successful. Because why? Because who better to know their fellow employees and have firsthand knowledge of their likes, dislikes, and what access they have, and the whole 9 yards. So that's the reason why lots of organizations are employing methods to teach their employees, right, about cyber hygiene and its practices, because it's not enough for an individual to be aware of the security issues or even such attacks, but creating a set of habitual practices for ensuring the safe handling of critical data and for securing the networks. It's like personal hygiene, like where you develop a routine of small distinct activities and to prevent and mitigate health problems. This is the same exact way. But again, a lot of organizations, they can't afford it either, right? So it's do they get their business up and running, or do they start securing data and putting a lot of money into that? So it's a fine balance between the two. But what is ransomware, and what happens when you get attacked by ransomware? It is, obviously a malicious kind of software that restricts access to critical data and vital information for any business and demands payment to get access back to your data, right? And there are two types of ransomware. There's crypto ransomware and locker ransomware. So crypto is as soon as it infects and encrypts your data, it actually encrypts only certain important files, user files, that are not necessarily, the entire hard drive, targeting just the most crucial data that can cripple an organization. And in case of a locker ransomware, as the name states, it basically locks out all the users from accessing the systems completely. And both of these are targeted attacks on individuals, again, primarily who are users within any organization, and are successful because someone slips somewhere and they lack cyber hygiene and they click on something. And despite organizations spending tons of money on all these techniques and teachings, right, through phishing emails, which are the most common, and some other resources are like removable media, malvertising, social media, and even through an innocent looking phone charging cable, right, lying around at the airport conveniently right next to the charging stations that can carry all sorts of malware. And obviously, the first stage of an attack is to infect the system. And the strategy is very simple, right? To basically download ransomware onto the machine and infect the system by by performing its programmed sequence of actions depending on its type. There are a lot of ransomware mitigation techniques that involve recovering encrypted data, most likely through reverse engineering. Right, so there are a lot of companies, actually, if you go online and search for it, even I think Microsoft came out with some reverse engineering techniques to mitigate ransomware and have been 100% successful. However, that is unique to just that strand of ransomware, just that exact strand. So because of the rate of introduction of new strains of ransomware and strands of ransomware, it makes it virtually impossible to be foolproof. And in real world scenarios, again, ransomware spreads because of unpredictable human behavior and actions. So again, the human factor. So now you are infected by ransomware. What now? So the story can end in three ways, right? If the organization can afford to pay a ransom, they end up paying it. Or if you look at it in a different angle, if the company or organization cannot afford to be down, they pay the ransom, right? So it's two different aspects of it. And $20 billion was actually paid in ransom in 2020 alone. And this number is staggering, and that's only the numbers that were actually reported and tracked. Lots of companies and organizations don't, if they don't have to report a ransomware attack, they don't because of bad publicity, right? So, but even if they do pay the ransom, how long before the company even realized that they were attacked, and how long before they go through the process of getting ransom paid and recovering their data back? How long is too long for them to be down, right? So this also has, obviously there's research out there. So to put a monetary value on this kind of damage caused by ransomware, it's more than $200 billion in 2021. That's 10 times more than the actual ransom paid. I mean, let's take a second to wrap our brain around it. That is just crazy. And the second outcome, which we rarely ever hear about, is when an organization really, has strong technical skills and can get the help of brilliant people to reverse engineer the ransomware operations and get their data back. And the third outcome, which is very sad, is where the organization is unable to pay a ransom. This results in a permanent damage and complete loss of data. I mean, 94% of the companies that suffer such a data loss, they just go out of business within 12 months. And what if neither of these things need to happen to you? You don't have to pay a ransom, and you don't have to lose tons of time and data before you are able to recover or restore your data. Panzura can actually help you and definitely help you avoid, paying a ransom and be able to recover and up and running really fast. So that actually, goes into a very good example of ours. So as a matter of fact, we have several customers who have been hit by ransomware, just like, a lot of other companies out there in the world. And you can take this to the bank. None of Panzura customers who have ever got hit by ransomware had to pay a single dime in ransom. And all of them were able to recover safely and be up and running. So an example is more recently, one of the customers, they avoided, this fate, right? So during a holiday weekend, so this Panzura customer, they got hit by ransomware. This customer has several sites across the US. And a lot of their users, they called in to their IT department, IT support, saying that they were not able to open files, that they were not able to access it. And when the customer's IT division, they started digging into this, they noticed that several of the files that were not accessible, actually all of them, they had an extension changed to .curator. And if you don't know, .curator has a relatively low level of distribution compared to a lot of other ransomware variants, but it causes a high level of damage. Its signature is the .curator file extension and the inclusion of a text file in every infected directory that contains instructions for contacting the attackers. I mean, how convenient, right? They are making it easy for us. Well, in a way. But to date, there are no known tools available to repair infected files other than the decryptor provided by the attackers. So the IT team, they found this and they immediately contacted Panzura support. And within minutes, they were able to disable Panzura support and the customer, we were able to disable write access to that particular filer that was spreading the attack by disabling their Windows and CIFS SMB license. And this automatically disabled communication with the affected Panzura CloudFS nodes and forced all the locations to go into read-only mode, preventing further contamination. And in less than 20 minutes, the ransomware attack was contained to local systems and preventing any further encryption. The customer's IT team, they actually worked with Panzura's global services experts to get a critical access to all the clean and current project data at that time. And then Panzura cloud security experts rapidly tested and deployed a custom script that immediately detected the creation of any new .curator files going forward and stopped it from being written to any other filer. And using Panzura data services layer, which is actually embedded in the Panzura global file system, the Panzura team provided the customer with a complete list of all the encrypted files affected and their location and the creation dates. And so this analysis showed every file partition for every office that they had, that had been infected or rather affected by the attack. So Panzura support kind of helped them, help the customer to restore all these files to the unencrypted state by utilizing Panzura analytics for each file to pinpoint exactly when these files and folders were encrypted. Using this information, it was a lot more easier. They were able to restore the last good version and be up and running. So I'll explain how this works in the upcoming slides. So apart from Panzura being able to already help you, right? Because we already have this technology, we are able to kind of I'll show you how this works. But similar to this, what if Panzura is able to auto-detect such an attack proactively and alert you within minutes or even seconds, and even be able to stop the ransomware from infecting your system any further? So let's dig into it. But again, before I get further into how Panzura can mitigate ransomware attack and how we can recover, I want to discuss, from a very high-level perspective, how Panzura is inherently built with data resiliency and data durability and protection in mind. So, all right, there you go. First, Panzura CloudFS allows organizations to store your data in the cloud object store after deduplicating, after compressing and encrypting it, and storing them as immutable objects secured by read-only snapshots. I mean, this allows for granular file and folder recovery in the event of a data loss or damage. And with Panzura's global file system, once the data is in the cloud, it cannot be changed, overwritten, or damaged in any way. And so Panzura's environment is actually immune to ransomware. Again, we'll dive into it in the next couple of slides. And one thing I want to stress about over here about immunity. When I say Panzura is immune to ransomware, it does not mean that Panzura will never get hit by ransomware. The Panzura environment will not get affected even if it gets hit by ransomware. It's like when you have, when you are immune to flu, it does not mean that you will never get infected by it. It means that when you get the flu, you will not get sick from it, and your body knows how to fight it off. And it's the same principle, right? So that's what I'm talking about. And the second piece, from an encryption and security standpoint, Panzura Cloud File System incorporates FIPS 140-2 certification, got military-grade encryption, secure erase, and a lot of other important features that are very important to all the customers out there. And one other aspect is, even if you lose connectivity to any of the public cloud providers, which is where a lot of customers do choose to have their object storage, with Panzura, you still have access, even if the public cloud provider actually goes down, right? because of the data caching. We'll talk about that as well. And also have the ability to mirror to a completely different cloud provider if you choose to, or a completely different region at no additional cost to you from a Panzura perspective. So with all these Panzura data services, you can really take advantage of the analytics, the intelligence to monitor, to audit, and control your entire data set. All right, so this particular slide, I would like to go over, it's a basic architecture, and I kind of show you how Panzura works from a high level perspective. I believe this will actually give you a very good understanding about the intelligence and the resilience of a Panzura environment. And so there are two major aspects that I want you to pay attention to, right? So because these aspects are very crucial when it comes to protecting your data against ransomware, and more importantly, being able to recover with ease. The first one is Panzura's data encryption and data immutability, right? The second one is metadata catalog and metadata updates that happen from everywhere to everywhere every 60 seconds. So this is actually a typical architecture where you can have 2 to 200 edge sites, or even more in the Panzura environment. Excuse me. So these are the colorful hash symbols that you actually see around the ring in this diagram. And actually, we have a customer who is looking to deploy almost 340 sites. These Panzura cloud file system nodes are simple virtual machine instances that can deployed, that can be deployed either on premises, running on either VMware or Hyper-V, or even in the cloud. Like for example, AWS EC2 instances, or Azure Compute, or GCP, or any other cloud compute provider. All of the data from these edge cloud file system nodes is written out to a single authoritative data source, which you see in the middle over here, which is basically an object-based storage. That can be in the cloud or on premises. So this can actually be any object-based storage like AWS S3, GCS, Azure Blob, and from an on-prem object store like Cloudian, IBM COS, or any S3 compatible object storage. So basically, this is a mesh architecture. It's not a hub and spoke architecture. And this mesh architecture is one reason why we are able to scale so easily from 2 sites to 200 sites. And the other main reason for this is because every single Panzura cloud file system node that you see here pushes out their metadata and synchronizes this metadata catalog across the entire mesh and communicates with each other every 60 seconds. And so we are not bound to one master device that pulls each individual node that can also create a single point of failure. So that's a huge factor over here. All right, so let's start the animation. So a user creates a new file, let's say over here in New York. And one of the first thing that happens along with the acknowledgement back to the client is that this file lock mechanism, which is activated on that file. This file lock can be as high level as being enabled on the entire file, or down to a byte range level, depending on the application that is being used. And this byte range lock mechanism is one of Panzura's many patents that helps managing multi-connection access to a file in a distributed file system, which allows for a true global file system without the fear of data corruption or data inconsistencies, right? And along with this, the data is then, which is generated, is separated into metadata and file data, which is one of the other places where Panzura has patents on. And this allows for Panzura to actually maintain a very granular and intricate metadata catalog. And this metadata catalog helps to maintain data consistency in near real time across all the sites and across all the users. And this metadata is also used to generate incremental system level snapshots, for a lack of a better term. I'm not talking about user generated snapshots. I'm talking about system level snapshots that are generated every 60 seconds as a pointer map in the metadata catalog. And most importantly, from a ransomware perspective, this metadata catalog also plays a huge role in detecting anomalies and threats, along with providing you the ability to recover data down to the file level. So it's very intricate and detailed. So both the metadata and the file data are encrypted. Security is, again, baked into Panzura, and it was never an afterthought. So we are FIPS 140-2 compliant, and all the data is TLS 1.2 encrypted in transit over the network and AES 256-bit encrypted when stored at rest. And as soon as this is done, the metadata is updated in the metadata catalog, and this update is instantaneously pushed out across all the sites, or rather to all the sites, and into the backend object store. And this is what allows for Panzura to enable you with near real-time data consistency, which no one else can actually come close to. And the file data is also written to the backend object store, which is a single authoritative data source. And another key aspect to pay notice here, right? So this backend object store is a single authoritative data source because, one, the data is immutable, meaning every single write is secured with what's called a non-destructive write. So once the block is written to the backend object store, it cannot be overwritten, it cannot be changed or deleted or destroyed. It can only be read from. I'm not talking about immutable snapshots that storage companies offer, which we also have, but I'm talking about the actual data itself. And two, the data from all the cloud file system nodes that are sitting at the edge on the ring, they write out the data to the central authoritative data source object storage. And so because we have metadata cataloging, we are able to reference the data hashes across the entire environment and take advantage of true global deduplication. And from a local perspective, all the cloud file system nodes are able to cache the relevant data that is written or accessed on a regular basis based on that particular location and based on those end users and what's relevant to that location, right? Which actually gives a performance of being local, having that local data experience at each of these sites from a user and application perspective. And since all of these locations instantaneously are aware of this file, like you saw, and because of the metadata synchronization, now let's assume that a user in London, this person sees this file and tries to open it. So Panzura immediately checks the metadata catalog, again, which is updated instantaneously. And because there is already a lock on this file in New York City, the user will be given a warning message and an option to open the file in a read-only mode or copy the file into a different location, or even opt to be notified when the lock on the file is released. All of this is to avoid any sort of data inconsistencies or data corruption, and of course, to be able to collaborate in real time. So now the user in New York City is done with the file and has saved the file and closed it up. The lock is released and the metadata is again updated immediately, as you can see. And so now the user in London is notified about the file being available for read-write access, and the user opens the file. The lock, if you notice, is transferred over the WAN, right? And the file is downloaded from the backend object store. Since this is the first time the file is actually being accessed, even though the user was able to see that, but it was never accessed. So this is the first time it's going to be downloaded. And the lock then is immediately put on that file and is updated in the metadata catalog, which all these sites are aware of as well. So when the user in London makes a change to the file by either adding or deleting information from this file, this information is again instantaneously updated. Sorry, I know you're going to get sick and tired of me saying metadata and catalog and instantaneously being updated, right? So, but that's the fun of it. That's the beauty of Panzura's technology. The instantaneous caching and the metadata, right? The intelligence behind it. So this metadata is pushed out to the backend object store and all the other sites. And again, this happens every 60 seconds, right? Along with this, the deltas or the changes that were made by the user in London, is also written out to the object store, and this is also encrypted and immutable. So now let's go through this one last step to show you where Panzura helps customers with not just from a performance and an intelligence aspect, but also from an efficiency perspective, right? But both financially and technically. So now the original user wants to access this file again for whatever reason that might be. And that person opens the file. The lock is transferred via the WAN because the metadata catalog is already up to date. And Panzura is aware that the entire file does not have to be downloaded from the cloud because the original file already exists. And just the changes that were made by the user in London, or actually the changes that have not been updated to that local file, meaning just the deltas, are downloaded, and thus saving on egress costs. This is all about efficiency and performance. So now let's dig into how this metadata catalog and the data immutability in the backend object store comes into play from a ransomware perspective. So hopefully that made sense to you, and this will actually start building, we'll start building upon that. So let's start with the typical use case where the user writes a new file, and this creates the first block here and is written to the backend object store. And when another user makes a change, as you saw before, in London or whatever, that creates a new block with just the changes that were made, keep in mind, meaning this does not write the entire block containing the entire file, rather just the deltas made to that file. And we make a couple more adds, deletes, edits, which create this third and fourth blocks here. And all four blocks, data blocks, are stored in the backend object store as cloud objects. One real important factor to remember here, again, is that every single block written to the backend object store is impervious to ransomware. This is because Panzura stores them as immutable in an immutable form, where you can only write once and read many. And once the data is written, again, because it's immutable, cannot be changed, overwritten, damaged in any way or form. So somehow, let's say ransomware malware has sneaked into your environment and starts getting to work infecting your system. Okay, let's start with all the clean blocks here that we already have, like I showed you before. So the malware now starts to infect the file, right? But the issue is that the original cloud object stores, or rather original cloud objects, cannot be overwritten because they are immutable. And so malware has to rewrite these same blocks again in order to infect them. What does this mean? This means that every single block of data that already exists in the backend object store has to be rewritten one by one in order for malware to infect and put its own encryption on that data. And because the problem for the attacker is not being able to overwrite these files since they are immutable to begin with. So new immutable files and blocks are created, which changes the pointer map as well. So now you're being held hostage for a ransom, and the attacker is completely unaware that they never really changed anything or really infected anything in your system because, one, the data is immutable, and two, because with Panzura, you have the capability to revert back to the pointer map from your snapshot. By the way, even the snapshots are immutable, so and are so granular that you can have an RTO of 60 seconds because of the system level snapshots on the pointer map that happens every 60 seconds, right? And the metadata. So it's as simple as reverting back to the previous clean version of the same block using the snapshot. So unlike restoring from a traditional backup, where we don't know which files or which blocks were infected, you actually are going back further, and a lot of times customers are restoring back an entire file structure or directory or folder, losing all the data on all the files that were not infected as well. So with this, because we are so granular, you are able to revert back just those blocks and basically get your data back. So no need for expensive egress fees or anything like that, just a tweak to the metadata. And as a result, Panzura snapshot restoration would take only a fraction of the time with a much greater reliability compared to if you have to restore from a traditional backup. So that's that. Now let's go into the brains behind it, right? So if Panzura Cloud File System is the brawn, because it's strong and it's immutable, Panzura Data Services is the brains and the intelligence that is built to provide you with the most unique and intelligent and robust data management solution. To begin with, Panzura Data Services, I'm going to say PDS from now on, it's simpler. It tries to eliminate and minimize the downtime created by a ransomware attack and the recovery from this attack. And PDS has a real-time view of what's going on. And in terms of the user access to the cloud file system, this is what is used to provide you with near real-time audit trails and alerts. This same set of data points available via the metadata catalog provides you the capability of searching through millions of your files and records and giving you results in a fraction of a second or even milliseconds. I mean, no other storage data management SaaS platform can come close to what PDS can actually provide you. Let me show you what I'm talking about, right? So over here, you see there are about 4 million files in our lab over here. And so doing a search, just check that out, how fast that came back. About 2,000 files came back, and it is just phenomenal. And you can even search down by the date and the age and search in whatever category. Now let's go into the audit aspect of it. The same exact thing, out of the 4 million files, it gives you 2,400 files, and it kind of shows you all the different actions that were actually taken over here, right? The timestamp and what happened and who did it. And if you notice, it is very, very recent and most up to date. And we are also able to kind of go down to the actions and choose which actions were performed by which users, and select just those to give you a much better perspective from an audit trail aspect. So this is the power of Panzura Data Services. And because of that metadata catalog, because of these data points, it is so robust and be able to give you that intelligence behind your cloud file system. So you have briefly seen, I've given you a very sneak peek of the intelligence behind Panzura Data Services, with the metadata cataloging in combination with the data being immune to ransomware. We are able to utilize these billions of metadata points from across all of our customers. Of course, no customer confidential data here, right? It's just the metadata points. And using machine learning processes, PDS is able to analyze these data points. These data points consist of user access logs, audit logs, file access logs, and other critical pieces of data. So remember when I mentioned in the beginning, being able to get insights from your data. This is that insight and intelligence that PDS is able to derive to better serve our customers. And now, what if PDS is able to analyze the same user behavior, utilizing the user access logs and audit logs to detect suspicious behavior and prevent ransomware attacks? In the beginning of the webinar, I briefly talked about the human factor and how human behavior is predictable and vulnerable, how attackers use social engineering to penetrate networks and hold you hostage. So PDS, analyzing these same exact user logs, right, which is actually the holy grail because it is the most granular approach for detecting a ransomware attack, as ransomware usually comes via a user action of clicking on phishing emails or ads or any type of scams to get the user to catch a bait. So most ransomware detection solutions are endpoint solutions like antivirus that sits on the host machine. These inspect the binaries of known ransomware. And some other solutions, they work on middle layer, like on a node or an appliance. But PDS does not have to do that because it would be very inefficient and ineffective. Instead, PDS works from the point of analyzing all the logs that it already has access to and visibility to. And these file access logs, user access logs, audit logs are by far the most powerful approach, which is based on the user behavior, right? Which is what PDS provides. And this would be in order of 3 to 4 times more impactful in detecting ransomware. And cross-referencing these data points and looking for suspicious behavior, meaning the behavior that is exhibited by exhibited from the footprints left by a ransomware attack and from the aspect of a ransomware as a whole phenomenon within the Panzura environment. A ransomware attack, it always exhibits some characteristics that are common in all ransomware attacks. Just imagine the power if PDS is able to detect these suspicious activities within your cloud file system, and that too in near real time, and send you alerts, not just generic alerts, but specific alerts about detecting a ransomware attack, which exact user account was infiltrated, even which specific node was infected, and providing you the detailed information about all the exact files infected without having to manually search for these, right? So this is the power of Panzura data services in protecting your environment from ransomware and making your environment ransomware proof. We would love to have a chat with you and show you more about this, not only to elevate your business from being able to manage all of your unstructured data, get the insights and intelligence, but most importantly, give you that ultimate protection for the data against ransomware. And the best part is, you will not be down for hours or even days or weeks just because you got hit by an attack. And of course, and most of all, you'll be immune to ransomware and completely avoid paying a ransom. So that's my end of my session here. Do we have any questions here, Petra?
Thanks, Kieran. Good presentation. I have one overarching question. So, are there any points at which we might lose data for customers? So we're syncing data from every location, every 60 seconds. That data is immutable as soon as we get it into the object store. Are there any points where a customer might lose even some bytes of data?
There is actually no, I don't believe so, because one main reason is the metadata points or the catalog is updated, and it's updated in every location as well. So even if one particular filer goes down, all the other locations actually do have the copy of that latest metadata catalog. And the second reason is we are actually, if you don't want to have a single point of failure, even within one particular node, we have the ability to deploy local HAs, either within that same region or within that same data center, or even within the metro, and even a global HA, where if any of your filers go down, the global high availability instance will take over and will keep giving you that continuous, the business continuity. So I would say, RTO of being 60 seconds, that's the most data you may lose ever. So.
Got it. Okay, and that was going to bring me to my next question, but in fact, John is more or less asking this question for me. So John's question is, what about backing up Active Directory to Panzura?
Yes, actually we can. We do that too. So there are two ways of doing that, right? So like I said, you have the local HA, which basically replicates your entire instance of that particular location to another high availability node, which fails over in case that particular node goes down. And your Active Directory and other VM instances that you actually want to back up, you do have you do have the ability to back those up using any of those backup solutions to just have that in there. And you can also back up these into let's say again the cloud mirroring aspect, right? So all your data is actually in the cloud as well, in two locations if you want to. And every single aspect of Panzura, including the Active Directory, can actually be backed up and can actually be replicated and not have to lose that data at all.
Got it, because I was thinking that is the one point of vulnerability, isn't it? It's data that's not in Panzura.
Exactly.
But, typical file systems are designed to let you edit files. And once they're edited with that kind of encryption, they're toast. All you can do is restore from a backup. So as a Panzura customer, I guess your point of vulnerability is any data that's not in Panzura, that's not treated like this. So what's your recommendation for any data of that sort?
The best way is, let me go back in here. So one major aspect of, okay, let's say the VM is actually hit by ransomware, right? One particular VM. Obviously, if you do have a local HA, it fails over. But the issue is, again, that particular VM is corrupted, and that data is now, that corrupted data is also replicated over. So it is as simple as blowing out that entire VM, okay, and redeploying a new instance